It's time now for the Sports Objective Podcast. No talking heads, just guys who love sports. Here's Dave.
Welcome into the Sports Objective Podcast, a very special Monday afternoon. It's not every day that you have the ECU head football coach, Mike Houston. Coach, welcome into the show.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate you having me on. It's the first time, so kind of getting used to your format here and whatever this isn't Zoom we're using. So I've never used this before.
Yes, sir.
It's brand new. We've started a few weeks ago.
Yes, sir. It's StreamYard and just allows us to go live on Facebook and YouTube. And like Dave said, we certainly appreciate your time.
No problem. No problem. How's everybody doing?
Doing well. Good. I wanted to ask you, Coach, how are things at Houston Academy? And I know I'm going to give a shout out to Amanda. I know she's working hard at home while you're there at the office.
She is. So I just got off the phone with her just a second ago. So schoolwork's almost done for the day. So she's masquerading as a fifth grade and first grade teacher. So I think she's probably the most appreciative of our local school system of anybody in our household. So, but things are going good, wide open. Every day's an adventure.
Coach, I'm sure you've been asked this question 100 times. How's the adjustment been doing everything from home, doing everything with the players through Zoom or Skype or whatever format you're using digitally to stay in touch? And I guess to try to coach as best you can digitally. How's that adjustment been?
Well, I mean, it's not ideal. I mean, none of us want to be doing it. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, so you can't sit here and say it's great, but I think that everyone has functioned at a much higher level than I think any of us could have anticipated when we started down this road and got into this situation. I've been very pleased with the players. They've been extremely interactive with the staff in our virtual meetings. They've done, I think, very well academically, which I had tremendous concerns about that when we started into this. And then my staff, I've been, most of them are like me. We're not exactly the most tech savvy guys in the world. And so we've learned how to operate using a lot of different mediums and a lot of different types of technology and been able to function and get done probably more than I would have thought we would have gotten done at this point with the breakdowns of our opponents. Recruiting is just at an extremely high level right now. So it's been frustrating being confined, but at the same time, I think we've accomplished a lot and functioned very well. I think Bubba's on mute right now, so I can't hear him.
Yeah, Bubba, you're on mute.
Yeah, I go. Sorry, Coach. One of the questions I wanted to ask you about is dealing with recruiting. You created a nice segue for me. So with regards to recruiting, obviously you can't comment on the recent commitment that we had, right. but some of the guys that we do have coming in, guys that are graduate transfers and right. so forth. Talk about some of those guys, and then also just is kind of a second part to this with everything being done over the phone or electronically. Just talk about the relationship with 5 Star Virtual and how that's going.
Well, I think that the one thing, the one that I can count on or comment on is Justin Chase, grad transfer offensive lineman from NC State, because he's made it public. We have a couple of others, one who's already committed to us that you should see him put that out publicly in the next couple of days. He wanted to get through some stuff at the beginning of the week. We have 2 others I feel like we're very close on, so we could have 4 or 5 grad transfers joining us eligible immediately for the 2020 season. The 2021 recruiting is where most of the heavy work is being put in because there's so many more of them. And we did pick up a commitment last week. We feel like we're very close on, anywhere from 6 to 10 others. The one thing that's holding us up, that's holding everybody up to a degree, is, getting the players on campus. The ones that have already visited campus, we feel like those are the ones that you'll probably see fall here, next. And then as soon as campuses open back up, we feel like we have strong relationships with so many players, and we really like our recruiting board. So, it's been a challenging process, but I think, our fans have probably seen a lot of the virtual tours we've put out, whether it's of our football facilities or the city of Greenville or game day or the weight facilities, our staff. I think that our recruiting department done a great job of putting a lot of that stuff together so that we can kind of make up a little bit for not being able to get those guys on campus. I did forget about one junior college transfer that we've got from out in California, the safety. Can talk a little bit about him. Really excited to get him into the fold. It's a deal where he's got a chance to come in and compete immediately for playing time, being an older player in the secondary.
Coach, as far as I wanted to ask you, just read this morning that unfortunately Coach Don Shula passed away at the age of 90. Of course, he built a huge dynasty, if you will, or at that particular time, undefeated season, the most winning coach. As far as Pirate Nation, I know when you took over the job, the program was very, very low. How close do you feel like we are to getting back to what Pirate Nation expects as far as winning?
Well, I think first off, just a little bit about Coach Shula. Much like I'm sure you guys, when I was growing up, he had Marino at quarterback, and of course that was post undefeated Super Bowl season, but still one of the top teams in the NFL. And I've read one of his books. Certainly, he was a legacy guy, Hall of Famer, one of the top coaches in the history of our sport. So. I think there'll be a lot of people you'll see paying tribute to him over the next couple of days and everything that he accomplished and the influences he had. So, a sad day in our sports in the sports world today. But to your question, how close are we? Well, we're a year in, a year and 4 or 5 months. We got robbed of a second spring practice, which is significant. So I do think that impedes a little bit our progress, especially with a new defensive staff. And such a young roster. But at the same time, I could not have been more positive coming out of winter conditioning about that roster and their attitudes, their work ethic, their energy, their toughness, the way they compete. We were so much closer to being the kind of roster that we have in mind for what we want, ideally, as far as the way we operate. Just night and day from a year ago. So I don't know how close we are. I hope you see us in a bowl game in December or January this year. I think it's realistic to expect us to be highly competitive this fall and have our shot. I think we have a shot to have a great season. I'm really excited about the players we have returning. I'm excited about the additions. I think with the right older additions, we could look up and we could be a team that's a lot of fun to watch and one that nobody wants to play. So I think we're getting closer every single day. I really need us to all get back in the same building and back together working towards that goal.
Coach, with not being able to have a spring practice and install and practice the new defense and pretty much an entire new defensive coaching staff, how different was our philosophy and our scheme on defense going into this year than it was last year, and how far behind do you think it puts the defense not having a spring practice?
Well, I think the coaches are on the same page. Of course, I've got pretty good history with everybody in that room, so except for Coach Ellis, but he's acclimated himself very, very well. So I think the coaches are all on the same page. The thing is, our players, we've done virtual meetings, position meetings, side of the ball meetings, so much. I think, mentally, I think they understand what we're wanting to do, but there's a big difference in doing it, on a board or through a computer and getting out there and doing it physically. So I do think it puts you behind. At the same time, I'm hoping that we will be able to get a little more work this summer than we typically would in the summer. I think you'll see the NCAA, when we are able to return to campus, I think you'll see them allow us a lot more access to the players in the summer. So maybe some, OTA style practices, so maybe we can make up for some of that stuff before fall camp starts. But it's going to be an exciting defense. It's going to be an extremely aggressive defense. It's going to be a very multiple defense. And I'm really excited about what Coach Harrell and that group of coaches, what they put together package-wise. the only thing that will limit us will be purely the learning curve with the players. That may limit us a little bit early on, but I would say by mid-season you should see us operating at a pretty full capacity as far as the playbook.
Coach, one of the things I want to ask you, kind of shifting gears just a little bit for a moment. Obviously, Fred Goldsmith, he's someone you had that relationship with at Lenoir-Rhyne. And in addition to Coach Goldsmith, whose background is on the defensive side of the ball, much like yours has been, just talk about some of the other coaching influences that really impacted you.
Well, I mean, like everybody else, there's been many. Whether it's Coach Brown, who's now back at North Carolina again. The first time he was there, I was a young high school coach. Had strong relationships with him. Some of the coaches that I've had relationships with are retired. A Mike Archer, Tom O'Brien, somebody like that. Some are still going. Andre Powell. There's so many things that we share with from each other. I've had the opportunity to spend significant time with Coach Saban. Significant time with Coach Sweeney. So you take two pretty drastic opposite ends of the spectrum right there. But those influences, every single one of those visits and those relationships, you take things away from them. And that's just the way coaching works. So what we do and our philosophy really is a culmination of taking bits and pieces from everyone. And it could be you take, something with recruiting from one person, you something with culture from another, something with scheme from another. But I've been very blessed that so many coaches have been so good to me in my career.
Coach, I wanted to ask you, as far as facilities are concerned, I know that because of all the problems we've had with COVID-19 and with the deficits and everything, one of the things that everybody on the podcast, I know a lot of Pirate Nation are excited about, is the opportunity to have an indoor practice facility. Is there any way that we can put up a special fund or anything that we can start rolling on it? I know you and I and all the guys on the podcast are ready for it.
I just need you to find me a donor with $25 million. That's all. I can get it done with that. So you find the right guy and we'll make it happen.
So we can
I'll get Kyle's uncle to do it.
See if we can get Vince McMahon on the phone for you.
That's it. I hear about these great alums. I need a couple of them to step up so we can name it whatever you want to name it. I promise you, John Gilbert doesn't care.
The WWE indoor practice facility.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
I wanted to ask you a question about offense. Last year, it seemed as the season went on, maybe our approach changed a little. We got a little bit more aggressive with the passing game downfield. I think maybe some injuries to Darius Penix early kind of made us change what we were doing offensively and go more downfield. It was successful at times. Will there be a continue with that philosophy to be more aggressive, or what will our approach be on offense this year?
Well, I think there's so many reasons when you look back at last year, and ironically, I was looking at some stuff this morning from last season. The last third of the year, the numbers that Holton put up and the offense put up through the air were quite impressive. But I think there's lots of reasons for that. I think you look at a freshman receiver like C.J. Johnson, a freshman slot receiver like Sneed. Those guys, it took them a while to kind of mesh with Holton. Holton, again, was just a second-year quarterback with a new offensive coordinator. Blake Prohl, one of the more experienced receivers, it's still his first year with, Coach Mines and Coach Dudzik. So I think as a combination of the coaching staff, really learning the personnel, everybody understanding the scheme, meshing well together, and also I think the evolution of the offensive staff with what we had and taking a different approach. At the end of the day, our personnel that we inherited here was different than our personnel that we had at James Madison. So we had to evolve. As far as what we're going to be this fall, I expect us to be very aggressive. I expect us to be highly explosive, and I expect us to be an exciting offense to watch. In my world, we're going to be able to run the ball effectively. We're going to be able to throw the ball effectively. We're going to take shots, and we're going to be extremely aggressive on the offensive side of the ball.
Coach, I wanted to ask you, as far as when it comes to Blake Harrell being the new defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about him and the new, of course, Trip Weaver and company, Ellis, all the guys on the defensive side of the ball. How excited are you? Because it looks like the offensive side of the ball, we got a lot of talent. We've got talent on the defensive side. If we could just get – there was a couple games there we let slip away last year that we could really be bowling in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, we all sit here and say, well, this or that or whatever. I mean, it's one play in each of 2 games, and you probably go to a bowl game last year. So I'm excited about the defensive side of the ball just as much as I am the offensive side of the ball. It's a completely different situation over there. We're a lot younger, but we are extremely athletic. I like the energy in the defensive staff room. I think the things that the fans didn't get to see and we didn't get to experience during spring practice was all the energy we had during off-season workouts, which comes from the personalities of the coaches we have in the room. So, I think you're going to see a very creative bunch. You're going to see a lot higher energy level. You're going to see one that, we're going to be very aggressive there as well. And I think the culmination of all the things that we've worked on between, last December and now, and up to the opener, whenever it is in 2020, you're going to see a team that's probably going to be pretty exciting to watch. Not that we're going to be perfect, because some of that excitement is probably going to come from our opponent making some plays, because we are going to be so aggressive. But you're going to see a bunch that's going to go at their opponents with everything they got. And that's kind of what Pirate Nation wants anyway.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Coach, taking a look at the trenches on the defensive side, obviously you lose guys like Alex Turner and then Jalen Price, and then also Kendall Futrell. Very excited to see him get the free agent deal with the Cincinnati Bengals. Right. So just talk about how some of those young guys are coming along in the trenches. I know you can't probably say but so much since we didn't have spring practice, but how are they progressing in the weight room, mat drills, and so on?
Well, I think we have about 30 returning snaps in the entire defensive front. So, there's not a whole lot of experience coming back right there, but we do have some very athletic players that are in that group. We do have large numbers, even if they're young. There's a lot of them, and I do like our talent. We've got the JUCO transfers at the end position, where they have tremendous length and athleticism, and I do think Henry has so much kind of intangibles, toughness, work ethic, all those things. I think Elijah, being a little bit younger, not as experienced, but probably more athletic, those guys are going to give us a little bit of older guy in the room. The young interior kids, I expect them to really come along and give us some depth right there, and hopefully we can ease them into those playing spots. Hosey has a little bit of experience inside. D'Angelo McKinney has a little bit of experience inside, so at least you have a couple of guys that are a little bit older. But it's going to be a group that's going to have to evolve throughout the summer and preseason camp to really figure out exactly who is going to be in the mix. Is Keziah Everett, is he ready, to be able to step on the field and play significant snaps? How far along is Travion Freshwater? I do expect him to be eligible this fall. I do expect him to be on the field playing for us this fall. There's just so many unknowns right now, but I do like the group as a whole. I think they are tough kids. I think that they have a lot of character, and they're dependable. And I think that's last year you look at our rotation. The 3 you mentioned, Kendall and Alex and Jalen. Certainly those 3 were dependable, but they're about the only ones that were dependable. I mean, they logged so many snaps. I think we have a group this year where you're going to see a lot of different guys in and out of the lineup. You're going to see us play a lot of different people, which in my opinion is much better because you're going to be fresher, and you're going to have greater depth.
Coach, shifting gears to a big picture NCAA question, but one that's certainly impactful in a number of ways. I've heard you speak out just as far as the ability to transfer one time without sitting out, but kind of along those same lines as far as a big picture question, just here recently it was announced as far as student athletes' names, images, and likenesses, and being able to be compensated for that. What are your thoughts on that? And we talked about it on the podcast before, and just with a guy like a Holton Ahlers
Right.
to use a player now, but going in the past, a guy like a Shane Carton or a high-profile player. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's dangerous. It's fine for the high-profile player, but what about the non-high-profile player?
Absolutely.
And what if that high-profile player is an offensive lineman that's protecting, that quarterback, and all of a sudden, you get this high-profile guy that might be getting, $5,000 from an endorsement, and the guy that's protecting him is not getting anything. I think that Pandora's box is what scares you, and I think that the name and image likeness. I hope the NCAA regulates it heavily. I don't know if they will or not. I have fears about abuse. I have fears about abuse in recruiting. What I want is what I think most in my chair want, and that's you want what's best for the student athletes. And I am all for any way that we can support them and help them. I'm all for anything that we can do that allows them to have a better experience while they're, at the college level playing as an amateur. But I think we got to keep in mind that that's exactly what it is. If you want to go and get these endorsements and all these things, and that's fine, but that's called professional sports, because you're going to have an agent. You're going to be in contract negotiations with businesses. And an 18-year-old kid trying to operate on his own, I see so many dangers in doing that. I think that people can take advantage of the kids. I think the kids can get them in situations where it's not good for them. And, I worry about big picture stuff. So certainly that's my opinion as one person. And there's so many, I gave you kind of a high level overview right there. There's so many. You could take any one of those things I mentioned and dive so deep into so many other offshoots from that, both positive and negative. But I think this is just something that you better be careful with. And the model that we have had certainly has worked for a long time. Certainly it deserves to be tweaked. Just a few years ago, we added cost of attendance, which I think was a tremendous positive move. Each of my players that are on scholarship, they get $4,500 a year on top of their scholarship in a monthly check. And I think that's good because they don't have the opportunity to get the part-time job that a non-athlete does. So I think any way that you can continue to enhance the players' experience and continue to support them, I think that's great. But I think we better be careful with some of this stuff that they're talking about, whether it be the one-time transfer, the name, image, likeness. There's just so many things I think are being done out of fear of a lawsuit, and without really, thinking far enough ahead to what some of the negative effects could be.
Yeah, and it's gonna hugely impact. I think, unfortunately, this is my opinion. I think it's going to have a bigger negative impact on so-called non-Power 5 schools than anybody. So no, I'm like you, Coach. There's a lot of fear and trepidation in that, and I do think it needs to be regulated heavy. I did want to ask you a question. You're not going to know this; it's just speculatory. But do you think with kids not being able to visit campus and things being closed, and do you think any chance we don't have the early signing period in December and we go back to the old school signing day in February this year?
Early on, you kind of thought that maybe, but I think you're seeing enough of FBS schools have large enough committed classes that I think you'll still have a lot of positive momentum to have that. I think you may see some guys slow down their recruiting a little bit because of that. For us, we're going to try to get as many kids here on campus for official visits as quickly as we can early in the season next fall. But even still, you don't know when that's going to be. So I think there's still a lot of unknown, but I think that with us having so many kids committed already, I think that there'll still be enough positive momentum that you'll have the early signing day.
Coach, one of the biggest things, the elephant in the room, is as far as the time of the season starting. We're even, Bubba even shared with the guys here on a group text early this morning about an article on ESPN. I think Pac-12 maybe potentially not playing, but then you have SEC and other conferences playing. How do you feel about that, about having some conferences playing and some not playing?
I don't see that happening. I see no way that that's going to happen.
Okay.
I think that's going to be the problem is, different parts of the country are going to open up at different, speeds. I do think that everything's going to have to be regulated by the NCAA. I hope the Football Oversight Committee, can do that fairly, because, if you have one group starting June 1, another group starting July 16th, obviously that's a huge advantage. And there's no way I think that's good for the game. So hopefully you're going to see over the next month things clear up enough, nationally, to where everybody feels comfortable saying, whatever it is, July 1, you can have players back on campus for mandatory workouts. Preseason camp starts X date. Here's the opening weekend. Whether it's August 29th or September the 15th, whatever it is, hopefully we'll have some more clarity here in the next month or so.
Coach, taking a look at the 2020 schedule, this is one, the home schedule doesn't have the likes of a Virginia Tech or North Carolina, a regional opponent like that, but it's a tremendous home schedule. You have
Right.
5 teams that were in bowls this season ago.
Right.
You had at least 2 ranked, and then another one that was just outside of the polls. So it's a heck of a home schedule and heck of a schedule overall.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, anybody that's got any sense knows it's a much tougher schedule than the one we played last year. I think the American Conference is stronger than it was a couple of years ago. So, you could have 5 or 6 teams ranked or right around the top 25 to 30 teams in the country. So it's going to be a challenging season. It's going to be an exciting season because, as I said, early on in the podcast, I expect us to be highly competitive with all those teams. And so I think everything from the home opener against Marshall and everything that's going to be, revolving around that game and the 50-year anniversary of the tragic plane crash to, UCF Thursday night, live television, ESPN. I think that's a tremendous opportunity to show off, ECU football, the American Conference, one of the top teams in the country coming in here. What a great opportunity right there. So I like our schedule. I think it's an exciting schedule. I think we got Tulane back on the schedule this year, which they had a great year last year. Coach Fritz is a good friend of mine. So I think there's so many positives to our schedule.
Yeah, talking about our schedule, you have passing thoughts when you're bored doing nothing during lockdown here. And I was thinking about opening up with Marshall and Holton. Growing up a Pirate, obviously he's been a Pirate his whole life, and he grew up, as a kid and as a teenager. That was a big rivalry in the Conference USA days,
right?
The East Division almost every year. Has he mentioned that? I would imagine he'd be fired up to be able to play in that game.
I mean, he's fired up to play, period. I mean, we haven't really talked about that game, but of course, I talk to Holton a couple times a week, and it's either on a Zoom chat with the team or he and I talk on the phone privately. But so it's not like we're having our usual conversation where I see him every single day. But we're just excited to get back together. I think the thing that motivates our team right now is there is starting to be a lot more optimism about the fact that we are going to play football this fall. And I think that's the big thing that everybody's excited about.
Well, Coach, I know that you've been generous with your time today. That I know that you're getting ready to chomp at the bit finally for you. How important is it for season tickets? I wanted to throw that out. I want everybody right now, including myself today, let's go ahead and get the season tickets. We're going to play this year. I'm very confident, and they can dial 1-800-ECU or ECUPirates.com, right?
Well, the thing is, John Gilbert has publicly said, listen, if there's anything that goes wrong, worst case scenario, there's not a season, certainly those tickets are going to be refunded. But the big thing is you want to get some positive momentum going with season ticket sales, because there's so much to be excited about with this team. And I think that you have the opportunity with everything that's going on with this crisis to have, the college football season be one of the rallying pieces of, our recovery. You look back, almost 20 years ago at the 9/11 tragedy, and you look how sports, really brought this nation back to a degree. And I think that you have an opportunity to possibly see college football do the same thing. So get out there, get on the phone and renew those season tickets because we need Dowdy-Ficklen packed this fall.
Absolutely.
All right, Coach. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate you having me on. Go Pirates.
Thanks, Coach.
All right. Thank you, Coach, very much. Coach Mike Houston there. Appreciate him as always. And guys, what a tremendous honor. What a great way to start the week to have Coach Mike Houston. I know he's working very hard, and I know you guys, where the three of us are very fired up and ready for sports. And it's just been really tough to have like a waiting game. I think the biggest part for me, guys, with everything, including my, by the way, our cruise was canceled today officially. So that we had for the Sports Objective cruise we had. I just found out. I knew it probably would be, but it became official this morning. So hopefully we can do that very soon. But everything, travel, if you think about, I know Kyle with Jessica, with your job, Bubba with you guys, with you and Stacy. I mean, everybody is dealing with COVID in different ways, including my children doing at Richmond Academy right now, doing their work right now, so on their laptops. So it's just been a crazy time, right?
Yeah, no, it has. I mean, I go back to work next Monday, the 11th, and I'm looking forward to it in a way. In a way, I'm nervous about being in a closed-in area with a bunch of people. But it's strange being at home all the time, and everybody's dealing with it. And obviously Coach Houston and the football team, and it's cool to have Coach Houston here. I wanted to mention that, Dave. We had him twice in person, once via audio. Now we've had him on video. So we've interviewed him 4 different ways. But no, obviously, yeah, everybody's dealing with this crap. We've been taught to death, and want to get back to some sort of sports, some sort of competition. And I'm hopeful that we're going to play college football this fall. I don't see a world, even if it has to be moved to the spring of 21. I just don't see. I don't see how financially we could afford not to play football. I just don't see it.
And the fact, guys, with Bubba, I know with you, I'm going to bring you in here. I know with the fact that with the likes of East Carolina, but all the schools right now, it's I think, Kyle, we've talked about it too, on the air and off, about potentially delaying. We've heard Coach Houston on other media outlets, including Pirate Radio, talking about the very fact that it could be October. But whatever the case may be, whenever we play it, let's play the season. These guys, with coaches and players and staff, they work their tails off. And you won't find a finer man than Mike Houston. That's why we've been such a huge fan of him personally and professionally. And to have him here at East Carolina is a huge deal. This fan base has been through way too much. What an exciting time it'll be for the fall. How electric do you think that crowd will be in Dowdy-Ficklen, the first game that we have back and coming up hopefully this fall?
Absolutely. And obviously, the worst case scenario is no football, and that goes without saying. And that's why I'm just hopeful. Even if it's not a 12-game season, 8 games, 10 games, hopefully there'll be some Pirate football this fall. Not only does East Carolina athletics need it, I think Pirate Nation needs it. You'll of course have those people that decide not to, and that's obviously their choice. But I know where I'll be. I know where you guys will be. We'll be in Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium if football's being played this fall. And Dave, kind of expanding out some, one of the questions I asked Coach Houston was to talk about those new incoming players, and we got some new news there. Hearing Coach Houston talk about maybe some other graduate transfers that have not been released thus far, and then there was one that. Give credit to Stephen Igo at Hoist the Colors, Nigel Knott, who's a cornerback from Alabama. He's had some injury issues there, but a 4-star recruit, had offers from the likes of Oregon, Mississippi State, in addition to Alabama. I mean, he had at least right around 30 offers, so he's a guy that could bring a tremendous amount of athleticism to the defensive backfield. I think he ran like a 4.35 or something like that, and had about a 45 or 46-inch vertical jump, which is just insane.
I've got some breaking news per release from the American Athletic Conference. Media Day and summer kickoff for football, which is normally held at the end of July, has been canceled. So that's not a good sign. That just broke.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I think that they could still do something virtually or whatever.
Well, it's still not a good sign.
Yeah.
Well, you never know. I think everybody's making decisions right now on the safe side. And maybe they do something like what we're doing right now with
they will be held virtually. Yes, they will be held virtually, but still, if you're limiting travel in late July, early August, what are the chances you're not going to be limiting travel late August?
I'm just saying yeah, I know there's always a possibility. I'm just saying there's a chance they're doing it because the very fact they don't want to get to where we have a huge outbreak again, just being on the safe side. It may be the case that things are bad still. Who knows? That's the thing I think that's been really rough is the question marks where normally we can travel anywhere, we can do anything, we can like go to Walmart without a mask or we can go to work without a mask in my particular case. So
what was the date for Media Day? Does it say it there?
Should have been July. Middle of July normally,
Yeah.
right? Carl? Middle of July.
July 12th through 14th, so it's a little earlier this year. I remember.
Normally mid-July.
Yeah, it's a few days earlier than normal, but still around that time, and definitely a great time. And I would imagine, guys, I think that they say that they're going to keep it there, but of course the headquarters is going to move to Dallas for the American Athletic Conference. But I think they said the football would stay because of the clam bake and the different cool stuff they have, that they would keep it there. Or am I misinterpreting?
No, I'd heard the same thing you did, Dave. Nothing was set in stone, but Mike Oresco said that it may very well stay right there in Rhode Island, even though the conference office is moving to Dallas.
And also Rhode Island has been particularly, now that you mentioned that, they've been particularly strict on this COVID stuff. At one point, they were, if you were from New York and you own vacation property in Rhode Island, they were physically having the police and the local National Guard in Rhode Island go to your home and tell you to go back to New York if you had came to your vacation home. So.
Yeah, it may be there's all kinds of, that's the thing. There's a lot of variables in there that it's hard to know all the different factors behind the scenes, but it would be nice to have that normally like we do, but nothing. I mean, having no Kentucky Derby last weekend was insane. I followed the Triple Crown, but I don't follow the other, like, I guess, smaller events when it comes to horse racing, but things like that, the Indianapolis 500 not happening this year, all kinds of, I think they pushed it back. Different things like that that's happening. It's just surreal.
Yeah, it is on the recruiting front, guys. I referenced that 2021 recruit. I didn't mention his name because I knew Coach Houston obviously can't comment on that. But that's Jalen Clyett, 6'4", 200-pound safety out of Maryland. Maybe projects to playing linebacker for the Pirates. We'll see how that goes. But I got to thinking earlier today just how this is impacting everything in terms of recruiting. It's obviously given Coach Houston, he said, as much as like a 6 to 8 week head start. He's more like where he would be in mid-June as opposed to early May. But that said, it will probably last year, you remember how many commitments, and we had probably 18 to 20 commitments prior to playing our first ball game. That's probably not going to be the case this year. We're going to have better relationships with those guys, but I would expect the commitments to come later in the fall once they've had an opportunity to get to campus, whether it's just to campus to take a visit of things in general or for a ball game, hopefully a ball game and the campus.
Yeah, and you heard him say earlier, initially he thought maybe there wouldn't be an early signing period, but now he thinks there will be. So,
and that maybe that's a good sign too, right?
Yeah, well, potentially, and that's certainly shows that there's enough positive momentum in recruiting across the board for all FBS schools that they think they can go ahead with the early signing day.
It's going to be, I tell you what, I'm excited about it. I tell you what, guys, this might be one thing I was going to say from the standpoint of that recruiting wise, this might be a blessing in disguise for us because Coach Houston getting a chance to really evaluate talent. He said more than, I know he said numerous times, more than he ever has. Maybe we won't be missing on, not that those guys don't know what they're doing anyway during normal circumstances, but you got to think about this is his third recruiting class. And certainly by year 3, 4, 5, and there is when I think that we're going to really see this program take off. And I'm very excited about not only how they were able to keep most of those guys under the last year of Mo, that recruiting class when he first came in, but the recruiting class for the second and third year, I think, is amazing too, especially when you look at certain states like we talked about before, like South Carolina, how they've been dominating.
Yeah, and I would call it his second recruiting class. That first recruiting class was mostly Montgomery's. But that was actually a solid recruiting class by Montgomery that year. It was really it's first and last. Overall, obviously,
Right.
side individually good players.
Hey, sorry to interrupt you, Kyle, but just kind of following up to the point that you're making about that initial class, the one that was actually Scotty Montgomery's staff. Tremendous job of them coming in and using the relationship they had with a guy like Demetrius Mooney, who came in last year and ran for nearly 500 yards as a true freshman.
Yeah, and I expect him to have a big year this year. It's going to be interesting to see between him and Penix who gets the bulk of the carries. When Penix was back healthy towards the end of the year, he got the majority of the carries. But Mooney shows he can make some plays, man, and he's got some explosive ability. So it'll be interesting to see.
Said he's added about 10 or 15 pounds.
Yeah, so hopefully that don't hinder his speed at all. But if he can get that weight and keep the speed, so it'll be interesting to see who gets the bulk of the carries between him and Penix. Competition does normally a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it comes down with Penix. And my question will be for Penix, it's not his talent, but just I don't know about you guys, but how healthy is Penix? That would be my how healthy going into the season will he be? I assume he's back to 100% now, but it's hard to say, right? Until you get to game time situations.
Yeah, I haven't heard definitively. I mean, I heard an excellent interview. If you haven't heard it, with Big John Williams, our strength and conditioning coach. He was on Pirate Radio, I think it was last Friday, but definitely go back and check that out. Awesome stuff with him. He doesn't do many interviews, but Big John, when I asked a question about some of the guys who were making biggest gains and so forth, some of the strongest and fastest, Big John said that Darius Penix had an excellent squat of 685. So by all indications, I mean, who knows how he's moving and cutting and those sorts of things. That's obviously a lot different than getting in there and squatting close to 700 pounds, but that's great news. And then also on that front, in addition to Darius Penix, Big John was talking about the offensive line. I don't know if he was kind of using the first guy on the 2D depth chart on the projected starters going into spring ball, but he said our top 5 on the O-line all squatted 550 or more. So that's also awesome news.
Yeah, and anytime your squat numbers are real relevant, because that indicates not only upper body strength but core strength and obviously leg strength. So you can explode, and obviously you need your running back to be able to explode. So squatting almost 700 pounds. That's Road Warriors type numbers there. Dave.
No doubt. I'll tell you what, Animal and Hawk, I wouldn't mess with them in a dark alley or on the public street with lights on. Those guys were tremendous back in the day with wrestling. But I love Big John. I think he's fantastic. I think that when it comes to conditioning, I was very excited. I was going to tell you one of my takeaways from Coach Houston real quick. I was very excited to hear, because that's the man, the CEO of the football team or the program, if you will, how excited he was about the guys working out. I know that it's different when it's virtual and all that, but accountability partners of the like. But Bubba, I think it's a good sign. Those guys, I think the guys are hungry. This program, we've had so many losing seasons now. It's not funny, unfortunately. And I think they're very hungry, and I think they'll do anything to win. And they know that they're going to have to be bigger, stronger, faster. And now is the perfect time to do that. You don't do that during the regular season. You do that in the quote unquote off season.
Yeah, Coach Houston's reiterated that in numerous interviews that he's done, as far as us being in a better spot than we had been at any point in his tenure. And like you're saying, Dave, that's one of my favorite quotes. And yes, I guess it's a very common quote and a cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason. Like Mike Mullis said when he was on the program, that's something I've always believed. But the quote is, there will come a time when the fall will ask, what have you been doing all summer? So that's one that I kind of kept in the back of my mind when I was working out back in my playing days.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask him, when you're in the middle of the interview, you forget things, but I wanted to ask Coach Houston, from a toughness standpoint and a physicality standpoint, where we were now versus where we were when he got here. Because, one of my favorite quotes of Coach Houston since he's been here was last year during spring practice after maybe the first scrimmage. And he was asked, when did he realize there's some problems from a physicality standpoint? And he said, when I played against these guys in 2016.
Yeah.
Well, there was no question about it. I mean, it was that was a tough time. The good news is I'm very excited, guys, that I was thinking about this morning, knowing we had this interview, how excited I am that stuff is behind us. We've got, I mean, this is the best the program has been as far as the coaching staff in a long, long time. You look at the football program. I'm really excited about Coach. Maybe we can have him on soon, Bubba. Coach Blake Harrell. That defensive side of the ball is really upgraded. I'm telling you, if there's any way that we can work a miracle on defense this year, we have a good shot at bowling. That's going to be the key to me, is looking on. I know we talk about the offensive line. I think we're going to be okay there. Depth is sure, but when you have Shank, but the defensive side of the ball, and he did say, of course, I mean, 30 snaps with the man for the defensive side of the ball is, as far as the defensive front is concerned, that's a little scary. Although maybe that's what we need, is some young guns in there and some fresh blood in there.
Well, Dave, Coach alluded to, he couldn't talk about it. We're going to have to get on IGO. We're going to have to send him that audio bite. But we know about 2 grad transfers. Only one of them he could talk about, but he said we could have 5. And so it'd be interesting to see if they're on the D-line or the O-line or somewhere else.
And that's one person that we want to have on soon, right, guys? Our good friend Stephen Igo. Maybe we can have him on the next week or so. I've been meaning to reach out to him. So Igo, if you're watching, we'll be in touch with you, because he's –
Igo never watches.
He never watches. I love Stephen. He actually – I've always asked him, when does he sleep? The guy has, like, knowledge, like, unbelievable. I don't think he ever sleeps. A lot of caffeine. Normally during this time of year, maybe, but with certainly go to 24/7 Sports with hoistthecolors.net. Sign up like all 3 of us are. Igo is tremendous, and we always like to look out for him, because he's good with us.
Sports, Dave, he had a great question today, posted on Facebook. He's been doing a lot of these what ifs and what if.
Yeah, I like that.
But today's question was actually really good, and it was, if you could have one player from East Carolina football history back in his prime, who would it be for this season? And my initial thought was Dwayne Harris, because who the hell wouldn't want Dwayne Harris back? But the more I thought about it, we really could benefit more from a C.J. Wilson or a Robert Jones.
Oh, there's no question about it. That defensive side of the ball, or Skip, one of those championship teams for Conference USA. I mean, that's probably – I was going to ask you this, guys, and I was going to ask you off the air, but I'll ask you right now on. Would you say that that 2008 or 2009 defensive line that we had, was that the best we've ever had? I mean, I know it's hard to – I know that's hard to say, but –
it's hard to say.
Yeah.
I mean, the 08 and 09 defensive lines, I'm going to categorize them as one, Bub. I don't want to compare the 2. So I'll say 08.
No. I meant that era.
And then the 95, 96 D-line was really good. And the D-line, 99 was really good. The Peach Bowl defensive line was really good. It's hard to say.
Yeah,
I was going to say, as far as the 2008, 2009 defensive line with the likes of Jay Ross, Linville Joseph, C.J. Wilson, and Scotty Robinson, and then also some quality backups and Josh Smith and others. I would compare it to, like Kyle said, the mid-'90s when you had the likes of Travis Darden, Big Rod Coleman, and some of those guys.
Travis.
Somebody else we haven't had on the show yet. We actually had it on the schedule one time, and he had something come up, but we'll certainly have him on down the road. Big Norris McCleary, who was,
Norris,
who was a defensive attack during the middle of the Logan years.
The monster, Norris McCleary. Maybe we could get the monster and then Terry Williams, the swamp monster, on together.
Yeah, we need us a swamp monster.
Yeah.
Guys, as far as we've talked about it some, as far as the schedule is concerned, you guys got me thinking about that. I'm really excited about that. The schedule actually is you were talking about is true. We don't have the name. I know, Bubba, you mentioned to Coach, but the schedule is actually a lot better than people give it credit for, especially if you know college football. I mean, you look at Georgia State, that's a tough game. You look at South Carolina, tough game. Marshall, tough game. Certainly in the non-conference. Norfolk State, it looks like is the one is but you never know, but you feel like you could win that one. But then the conference schedule, the conference is better. So it's really a good schedule for people to go out and buy season tickets.
Yeah, somebody ranked the 23rd toughest schedule in college football. So it's It's not a weak schedule. If you think it's a weak schedule, you're stupid. We did have the big name Power 5 opponent with South Carolina, but you got Marshall, 8-win team last year. You got Georgia State.
Team.
Georgia State went to a bowl last year. You got as I said, South Carolina. Then you get it to the conference. You get it to the conference play in God Almighty. I mean, UCF, Temple, Cincinnati, SMU. Yeah, I mean, you know what it is. It's Navy. Don't forget Navy.
Navy. Oh my God, shaking in your boots, right?
The Tulane went to a bowl.
I hear anchors away in my dreams.
Yeah.
That's what I joked with my dad back in those years where we were giving up. I think we had 3 games where we gave up like a combined 180 or 200 points in Dowdy Ficklin against those guys. I said, holy cow! I said, I'm hearing anchors away in my nightmares.
Yeah, I was going to mention about the American with Connecticut gone. It's sad to say it. When teams are looking and going, well, what's the easy win in the American? Guess who it is?
Connecticut. They're bye-bye.
No, they're gone. So the easy win.
I know. I'm saying that they went as far as us looking for an opponent.
Reception-wise, yes.
Yeah, it's us. So I hopefully that'll change. I do think it's going to be interesting to see. You got first-year head coaches. South Florida has lost some talent. It'll be interesting to see how fast they turn things around. Going to be a pretty big, I think, change culturally wise what they're doing up there. Or down there. So it'll be interesting to see if they take a step back this year. Sometimes you take a step back where you can take a step forward. And there's some other schools. Memphis, yet another new head coach. I mean, how many times can you survive that? Though they've improved their recruiting so much in the last few years. So it'll be interesting to see if there's ground to be gained. Tulane, I think, was a very senior-heavy football team last year. Obviously, this is year 4 for Coach Fritz, or year 5, whatever it is. But I believe they're going to be pretty young.
What about? I was going to ask you guys about. To me, the team, probably the best team in the conference. Would you say would be Cincinnati?
Cincinnati would be one of the best teams. Yeah, I mean Memphis is the defending champions, but the new head coach, they lost a lot. UCF, they got an interesting situation at quarterback. Will Mackenzie Milton make a return? They got a lot.
Ask you about that.
They got a lot coming back. UCF's going to be pretty good. Could be UCF, could be Cincinnati. SMU's going to have something to say about it. Is Houston going to take a step forward this year?
Yeah,
the Cougs, I mean, not Coach Houston. And Dana Holgorsen. Disaster there last year.
Yeah, Kyle, you read my mind. That's where I was going next. I was going to say that's the one that I'm really keeping an eye on this year in the Houston Cougars with everything that transpired last year during Dana Holgorsen's first year with the whole situation there. I'm drawing a blank on the quarterback's name.
But we know who you're talking about.
But yeah, when he made that decision to abuse, however you want to look at it, the red shirt rule, and now he's at Miami. So just how will that go after winning 4 or 5 games a season ago, and then also kind of like you were saying with UCF, I was talking to Jeff Allen, our buddy with the Nightline Sports Network, and the AAC report earlier today, briefly, and I'm going to check with him and see what he's hearing about Mackenzie Milton.
Hey, Kyle, you remember, I never forget, as long as I live, I know where I was. I was near, and Kyle will know what I'm talking about. I was right near North Pitt High School. It's one of those moments that you never forget where you were. I'm talking to Kyle. We're talking about college football, whatever, and I'll never forget, it was a Saturday driving to Southern National Motorsports Park to call a race. And all of a sudden I hear Kyle go, "Oh my God! Oh my God!" And I'm like thinking it's something I did. We were not having a heated debate about something, but he goes, like, we're having a really cool conversation. All of a sudden he goes, "Oh my God!" And I said, "What?" He said, "You won't believe it." And I'm like, that's all he could say. I'll never forget that, Kyle, and I know you saw the actual, I didn't get a chance.
I don't know if you'd have been headed to a race. That was Thanksgiving weekend, I believe.
I was for the Thanksgiving Classic.
Okay. It was on Black Friday, Maybe it was on Saturday if you were at the race. In my head, it was on Black Friday, but it must have been on Saturday. If you
we did on a Friday. We did Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We do the Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and it was UCF, USF, and I saw the play where McKenzie tore up his leg, and it was bad. It was real bad.
It was so bad.
I was watching it live with Dave on the phone, and it was bad.
I remember he couldn't tell me it took him a few minutes before it was so upsetting, obviously, to him, but I'll never forget that. Usually you're very descriptive. You can give me a play-by-play of like something that happens. Sometimes Kyle is my play-by-play guy, or Bubba the like. But I'll never forget where I was and everything when that happened. And we wish that kid the best. I'll tell you what, if he comes back to the level he was, I mean, that could be a daggone movie in the making.
Heisman Trophy. One of the you pick a year. The year he got hurt or the year before, either one. McKenzie should have won the Heisman. He should have been in the top two.
Yeah, when McKenzie Milton had that injury against USF over in Tampa, I just remember watching it. It reminded me of Marcus Crandall's injury when he broke his leg in the 1993 game against UCF. And kind of De'Aaron King, of course, was the name I couldn't think of, the former Houston quarterback that's now at Miami. One of the things I wanted to bring up just very briefly, because I know it's not something we're necessarily schooled on, but it'll be interesting to see how he does for new offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley, who came over to Miami from SMU.
Yeah, Rhett Lashley seems like he's been everywhere the last few years. My opinions of Rhett Lashley, he's worked with some good coaches. It'll be interesting to see. He's going to have full reign of the offense. There's no guys. God, I'm terrible. That's SMU's head coach.
Sonny Dykes.
There's no Sonny Dykes, and who's Auburn's his head coach?
Gus Malzahn.
There's no Gus Malzahn or Sonny Dykes to lean on. So it's going to be all Rhett Lashley at Miami running the offense this year. So he's either going to get full credit or full blame. But when you got De'Aaron King to run around back there for you, that'll make your job a lot easier.
With a couple minutes we have left, guys, I know that I want to get your thoughts quickly on what the biggest topic everybody's wondering about. When do we start college football? I know that probably all three of us are going to say October. It'll be nice to have August. I'll start with me. It'll be nice to have August 29th. My head, I think it's the first week in October. I agree with you, Kyle. What do you think, Kyle? I'll go with you first.
I think we start.
What? October 1st?
Jessica's reading me some breaking news, but my guess, I'll come back to that in a minute. But my guess will be first week of October, and we'll start practice around the very end of August.
What do you think, Bubba?
I agree. I think it will probably be about a month late, something like that. I was just looking at the calendar as far as that first weekend of October. That's October 3rd. So yeah, I think it'll probably be something like that. And what we've heard, guys, from Coach Houston, just as far as he really feels that 6 weeks, and I've heard Commissioner Oresco say the same thing, as far as you have that 4 weeks or so of camp and then an additional 2 weeks or so of lifting and running and doing all the speed and agility stuff you need to get ready. So I think it could be something like that, early mid-October.
Arkansas AD, more breaking news. Has stated that he's telling his football staff and players they can report back on campus and begin practice in mid-July.
There you go. That would be fantastic. Hey, man, if that's the case, that is great news. That's really, really good, right? I mean, that would be. I'm happy to hear that.
I go back to what Bubba was talking about, and Coach Houston doesn't think it can happen. He thinks the NCAA is going to step in, but. If the SEC and some of these other conferences want to play football and some other conferences don't, I mean, that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. The NCAA may step in, but the SEC and the Big 12 or the Big 10 may get together and tell the NCAA where they can shove it. We don't need you guys anymore.
I mean, look what they're doing now with the autonomy and the Power 5, and they pretty much dictate anything anyway. So I mean, if they say they're going to play, they're going to play. I mean. And you think about the millions of dollars that every school. I mean, even Alabama. I mean, what I'm hearing, and you guys are too, is the Alabamas of the world are still going to hurt. Maybe not as bad as we would, but they're still going to hurt bad.
They're going to lose more money because they make more money, Dave. If you, they're not going to hurt as bad as us. You know, if they're making $80 million a year on football, and we're making $10 million a year on football, they're going to lose more money than us. But we need that $10 million worse than that. They need that $80 million because they've been banking money. We hadn't. So they're going to lose more money on the front side, but it would hurt us worse.
Right, no doubt about it.
Well, because they spend more, because they make more, they're spending a lot more in the arms race with different facilities.
Yeah, true.
I've had a lot of fun with you guys. I know that we had the matinee here on the Sports Objective. Any final thoughts before we go?
Nah, just hope we safely start practice sometime this summer and play ball sometime this fall. It'd be nice if we start on August 29th. My gut tells me that's not going to happen. Unfortunately, that we'll start exactly on time, but who knows? Maybe it will. I'll be happy when we get you can start across the board. Everybody can start practice on this date, and we're going to start football on this date, whether it's October 1st, October 5th, August 29th. Once we get those dates and we know what's going to happen and we can guarantee there's going to be football, then I'll be happy and I can look forward to it.
All right.
And
do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned getting Blake Harrell, defensive coordinator, on. We'd like to have him. Obviously, Donnie Kirkpatrick, our OC, on the basketball front. We recently had a commitment here in the last couple of weeks, signee now, Noah Farrakhan. So we've reached out to Jody Jones, ECU's basketball director of media relations, and we're going to have Coach Dooley on the program here in the next couple of weeks. So that will be a lot of fun. And then on Wednesday night, we will be talking East Carolina baseball. Obviously, we're getting close to what would be regional time here in the next few weeks. So we're going to reflect with some guys who just had unbelievable impressions of the jungle in Clark LeClaire Stadium. We're going to be talking to Colin Donnelly, Chris Enns, and also Liam Scaffarello from Quinnipiac. So we'll have those guys on for a little bit.
Fantastic.
Wednesday night, and we'll also we may have somebody else like a Corey Glore or something as well. So tune in for that.
Yeah, if you got anybody you want to see on, anybody Pirate related you'd like to see us have on, comment below, or you can email us or hit us up on Twitter or comment on our Facebook page. Get in touch with one of us, and we'll see if we can get whoever you want on.
No doubt about it. The sportsobj@gmail.com. And I appreciate it, guys. Thanks to Coach Mike Houston, Bubba Rosenbaum, and Kyle Barber. Thank you so much. You've been watching and listening to the Sports Objective Podcast. Go Pirates.